Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Milo called Budding Ornithologists Are Weary of Tired Analogies. So the last time I reviewed Milo was a very different experience. And if those of you are now wondering where the hell that review is, it was last year when I was in Atlanta and connected with a few members of the Dead End Hip Hop crew to film over at Mike Seatown's channel. Go check out the review, it's pretty good. And as such, while I did have a chance to go more in depth surrounding my introduction to Milo fairly late in the game, I was never quite pulled on board in the same way as so many fans were with So the Flies Don't Come. Really came to like and appreciate Who Told You to Think as one of Milo's strongest projects to date. I will stress that Milo can be an artist with whom I've got a bit of a distant relationship. It's the sort of music I really need to be in the right mood to appreciate and sink in and dissect. Give him plenty of listens to really decode his pool of references and more oblique production. And as such, while I thought his last album really was quite great, it wasn't exactly something I was in a hurry to revisit last year, besides maybe the Deep Cut Embroidering Machine, which I thought was a great song. And as such, while I was gearing up for yet another round of abstract hip-hop, fresh off of Lupe Fiasco's massive release a couple days ago, this looked to be a lighter affair. Where Who Told You to Think was a respectable length for 15 songs, this album didn't appear to have so many songs breaking the 3-minute mark, and was reportedly even more abstract and diffuse than his last album, which, I don't know, I'm not against that, but I also remember saying that the immediacy of Milo's last album was what I found the most truly gripping. But still, I wanted to give this some time to really sink in, so what did we get from Milo this time on Budding Ornithologists Are Weary of Tired Analogies? So okay, this is tricky. I've given this record a lot of listens to really sink into the bars and the low-key jazz poetry vibe of this album, and then read that Milo wasn't intending to tack on a deeper theme or moral behind it, that it was more intended as scattershot, barely edited poetry overloaded with nuggets of wit. And you know, there is a part of me that's kind of intrigued by that. Hell, the title of the record can be translated to Those Who Are Learning the Science of Birds, likely referring to women if we're getting old-timey here. They're tired of the old jokes and the double entendres. So, alright, fine, with that in mind, if Milo's looking to spit from off the cuff, I can respect that, as well as the subtle themes that he nestles between the lines that folks will never quite get a full handle on him as an artist, and then his brand of quasi-inconsistent art is just as valid as something that is more consistent. Which, sure, that's fair, but at the same time I can also say that this doesn't quite pick up the same level of emotional resonance for me, as I can recognize free-thinking rough drafts of ideas that could coalesce into more as what they are. I can love and admire the wordplay, absolutely. I mostly like the production here too, but it can't help but feel like a little bit less than the sum of its parts, and explaining why, again, it's kind of tricky, because, to be blunt, I've got a hard time saying bad things about Milo as a rapper and MC. I like his flow and his pensive delivery that can occasionally feel a little bit exaggerated at points, but rarely in a bad way. And in an odd way, I kinda like his attitude. The guy who is clearly the smartest one in the room, but also the quiet one, but capable of flexing when he really needs to. I'm not gonna deny that there is a certain amount of relatability to that for me, especially given the generally tasteful atmosphere and the rich, overeducated, slightly nerdy reference pool that he's bringing. It's different for sure. You can tell that there's a deeper well of anger surrounding his experiences in this lane as a black man, and this irritation isn't quite as buried as I think he would like it to be on this project, but there is some common ground there, enough that it makes me wish that if he was aiming for a higher idea beyond intense witticisms and emphasizing that inconsistencies don't exactly make for bad art if it's reflective of some truth, especially when Milo is so content to shift the narrative of said truth when you think you've got more of an idea of what he could be saying on the project. Now, of course, when you come to the realization that so much of this album is driven off of deflection and people not seeing the point, be it about Milo or his work, it kind of changes how you engage with some of the content. On songs like Pure Scientific Intelligence Quantum, he's referencing MF Doom, who built his career on scatter paintings of rummaging through abstract metaphors and ideas. And a similar similar alienating intention is also there. Hell, on Aubergine Cloak, he references how some people assume the Ruby Yacht repeatedly referenced on this album is referring to an actual boat, when in reality it's an extended metaphor. And when you go to myth building exercise number 9, cute Beatles reference there, I caught that. When it's going down the river Styx between life and death, but being immersed in the river Styx makes one, like Achilles, immortal, it's clear that the Ruby Yacht is more of an abstract structure in order to carry him, especially when paired with the repeated references to the 1959 Camus film Black Orpheus, another figure passing between here and the underworld. And when you expand that concept, you get a little bit more thematic here. The black man repeatedly caught between life and death, riding on the structure of perhaps even the music itself, which makes Milo's anger make sense at those who would co-opt that mechanism. It kind of makes the underlying anger and increasingly direct flexing on this album have some resonance, especially on songs like Stet, where Milo makes it very clear that the root of his artistic core is not just as a black man confronting systemic racism, but compounded upon it in his very unique approach, a distinct figure that will not be pigeonholed. Of course, what you also rapidly come to notice is that Milo intentionally does not present himself as an aspirational figure in rap, because you dig a little bit deeper and you find the well of postmodern, very internet-driven nihilism and a vague contempt for the hip-hop industry, especially on songs like Galahad and Goose Down, a system that he seems to loathe, especially in the mainstream, and would prefer to just salt behind him as beyond repair rather than make the attempt to, change or fix it. And I get Milo's pessimism and disillusionment here, especially as somebody who has never tried to make commercial music, hates how a very specific brand of hip-hop can become one of the few avenues out of the trap for black men, and on songs like Failing the Stress Test, even showing how figures he used to idolize could have potentially let them down. But it also lends the project an odd sense of sourness that, if I'm being honest, has been creeping into Milo's work for some time now, and doesn't do a rapper as thoughtful and potentially wise as him a lot of credit, especially with this brand of production. It just kind of throws you off edge in a way that you kind of don't want it to. And that's the other big thing with this album. In comparison with Who Told You to Think, this project seems to be circling back to a similar low-key, jazzy rap vibe that was more prevalent on So the Flies Don't Come. And while it can be certainly pleasant and match up a lot with Milo's low-key delivery, it doesn't always match the content or provide a lot of momentum or even really an avenue for people to engage in it. And that makes the entire mood of this record feel a little bit weird. Sinuous bass lines, low-key percussion, fuzzy samples, dreamy jazz piano lines, faintly buzzing touches of synthesizer, and less organic instrumentation. Perhaps not a lot of standouts in terms of individual melodic fragments, but it does mostly come together as a complete album, as a whole piece of music. You really should listen to this as an album, but it never seems to grasp that darker core of tension in the instrumentation that was lurking beneath Milo's delivery and content in the same way that the glitchier, slightly more aggressive production did on Who Told You to Think. As an album, it's more content to meander and curdle within itself with a really odd sense of momentum, feeling both longer and shorter than you would otherwise expect, which is one reason why, despite my fondness for the few snapshots we get of him, I'm a little bit bewildered why Elucid is even here, because not only does his vocal tone command more attention like he did with Arm & Hammer, he's also more openly earnest in his own distinct way, which is a weird clash with the mood that Milo's presenting in his content. And it also means that it's hard to call out any one song as an individual standout, especially when there are cuts that feel more like a fragment of a thought that can't stand on its own than a full song, like Low Coup, or the extended interlude like the esteemed saboteur Reggie Baylor hosts an evening at the Scallops Hotel, or even pure scientific intelligence Quantum in its own bizarre way. But in the end, I don't know, guys, this project really frustrated me because it's a much easier record for me to appreciate than outright love. It's incredibly clever and the emotional core is there, and I definitely appreciate the anger, but the more dimensions of it you untangle, the less likable it feels, especially juxtaposed with production and delivery that are way too chill to match that anger and way too distant and abstract to match an immediacy you would think would be there to drive to action. And for me, I'll treat this with the seriousness and rigor of any project, and believe it or not, I'm not judging it for most of the inconsistency or the obliqueness, but rather for a dissonance that lacks a deeper purpose or even really seems intentional. And as such, I'm giving it a light 7 out of 10, definitely recommended for Milo fans. And if you're looking for an easy record to put on in the background or a hard record to decode, this will be up your alley. Just don't be surprised that in both cases, you're not quite as satisfied as you'll want to be by the end, because even with this, I'm not quite sure Milo's satisfied, if that's even indeed where he wants to continue going. We'll see. But hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. It's kind of weird following Lupe Fiasco with covering this album. I was listening to them, someone overlapping, and I tried not to make any comparisons because you really can't. I gave them the same score, but for very different reasons. But hey, you want to buy the record, link down there below. You also got a link down there for streaming as well. I got the poll up there. I'm curious where you guys fall on this Milo record, especially for fans, because I don't think it's among his best work. I don't like it more than Who Told You to Think, but that's a different conversation. But hey, if you guys want to check it out or tell me how wrong I am, have fun. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or help support this channel, and believe me, the scheduling is going to be interesting the next couple of weeks, the link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right there. You want to see my schedule? It's linked down there below on Instagram. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.